I looked at that footage and it's like, that's ours and I want to take it back. That's our people in those images. Those are our villages.
These men looked like, sounded like, dressed like what the West is taught is a terrorist.
Yeah.
But the audience, they're the protagonists.
Yeah. I said, yeah, I am romanticizing them. Yes, I am. The film is from a child's point of view, and what's wrong with being romantic about a resistance? It's the most honorable thing in the world, is to defend your land and defend your family. And still, the ideas of the film are threatening.
Why do you think that?
Why do you think that? It's about, because you know what? We're not victims in it. We are active parts, and we are, memory is resistance. Palestinians telling their story.
We're sitting here today with one of the shapers of Palestinian cinema, somebody who has brought the Palestinian experience and now Palestinian history to the screen. We're here with Annemarie Jacir. Her latest film, Palestine 36, is the largest Palestinian film production of all time, and it takes the audience into the heart of a period of time that many in the mainstream overlook, which is the 1936 revolt against both the British rule and the beginning of Zionist colonialism and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. The film has already made waves across the world as it was debuted in Europe back in September. It's already racked up numerous award nominations and wins, and secured a spot in the shortlist for the Oscars Best International Film. Now the film is debuting in the US, and we're here to talk to her about the nearly decade-long process that it took to make this film, what she wanted to portray with this film, and how maybe that's changed with the timing of the release. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I have to say, whenever I left, I thought to myself, this is the best Palestinian film that I've seen so far. Which is saying something, because you made Salt of the Sea, which is like the Palestinian American, story in a film.
Thank you.
No, thank you. There were a lot of things that I think I treasured in it, both as a Palestinian and as somebody who grew up in the West and cares about Palestine. And we're going to talk about all of them, hopefully, as much as we can. But I think one of the strongest experiences for me watching it was getting to experience Palestine before 48, which I think is usually the beginning of any story or narrative that we have in books and in film. So it was so I loved seeing Palestine when it was still a part of progress in technology. Yeah. You show the first radio broadcast in Ramallah, and showing how educated we were, how connected to the world we were. Yeah. We were going back and forth. And you've talked a lot about how this has been a very long process for you, and that you were obsessed with the history, as many Palestinians are. Yeah. But
we're all obsessed.
It's all we have.
Yeah, it's all we have, exactly.
But can you kind of take me back to the inception of the idea and why you thought this needed to be told, and also on the scope that you told it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like that, what you said about, it is who we were, what we looked like, what we did, before, the Palestinian story, so everybody begins, from the Nakba, but we had lives, and we had lives that were stolen from us, and it's an amazing time in the 30s. It was like, it's a really modern time. People were moving from their villages to the city. There was like, you could become something else. we were connected with the rest of the world. And all of that getting severed and destroyed. And of course, following, I was interested in following, characters in a film that before it's even a possibility, an inkling of a possibility that we will, in 10 years' time, by the time the story ends, it's the Nakba. Right. And everybody in the film, all the characters become refugees. Right. And they lose it all. And it's the story of us. And I wanted to make it for us, about us, and by us. And not, the story of us being victims. Mm-hmm. We have been wronged, but we are not victims. you know, and I didn't want to do something that was like, you know, there's all this destruction. There's something really beautiful to celebrate about us and celebrate about our resistance.
Yeah.
And I wanted to honor that history and honor that past and honor that story and honor our martyrs, but also critique. You know, the film is for us, and we have to, you know, critique a lot of things about, you know, what we did and small decisions that were made, and the way, you know, the film is a lot about class, a lot about many other things besides colonialism, besides, you know, but of course it's all part of it, right? It's all packaged in, it is connected to each other. So I think it was all those things, and you know, I didn't want to do something that was about, like I said, us being like poor, destroyed people, but the time before that, and I didn't want to humanize us. I think it's like, that's, you know, I'm not interested in that conversation.
Yeah.
You know, this is for us. We don't need to humanize ourselves for anybody. We don't owe it to anybody to, you know, humanize ourselves. And I think that that's something also that I just, you know, we have to break out of and just tell our story from our point of view.
Yeah. And the research, I'm super interested in it. Because I could tell that there was so much attention being paid to the smallest detail. My ancestors are from a village in the West Bank in Ramallah, and we've kept the dialect, the Fallahi dialect that I got to see here, Abbas.
Yeah.
You know, speaking with the chat, she sounded like my grandma.
Yeah.
She was dressed like my grandma.
تعرفي وين أرضك؟ أرضك وين مدافن أهلك.
And the clothes and all of it. And I know that it's hard to access actual research, because Israel has taken a lot of our artifacts, a lot of our documents. So we have some text, we have some pictures, and we have the stories that we've passed down, you know, generation to generation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, a big part of the research was the oral history, was talking to people, you know, hearing people's stories, my parents' stories, my grandparents, like, you know, all this conversation, the oral history. There's been an amazing amount of work by academics and historians.
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, bless them, because that was so important to be able to access and use, and you know, whether it's, and then there were diaries, and there was, you know, there's also written stuff that you know, there's a lot out there. There hasn't been any film about that moment, but there's a lot written about it. And then the archival footage was really, it's British footage, right? They filmed everything. They filmed everything in all their colonies. Yeah. And I looked at that footage, and it's like, that's ours, and I want to take it back. That's our people in those images. Those are our villages. Yeah. Even the villages, like, they don't exist anymore, because Israel just, you know, razed to the ground more than 500 villages. You know, like when we were working on the film, we're like, okay, we need the heart of the film is the village. Yeah. Where do we find a village when we don't have villages anymore? So you know, it was, you know, when you talk about the artifacts, it's anything from like the typewriter to, you know, the way the clothing is, but also the actual village itself. Actual locations are all lost to us. Like, either they've been destroyed or we're not allowed to, you know, be there. Yeah. Planting the crops of the 30s, you know, we did that, and we started planting like cotton. Palestinians planted cotton.
I didn't know that.
And I didn't know that until I started seeing photographs of it, and I was like, oh my God, the cotton. And then I researched it, and it was like a major part of our lives was cotton, especially in the villages in the north. So then we're like, okay, like, we're going to have a cotton field. And so we planted tobacco, we planted cotton, but then we couldn't plant the cotton because cotton is contraband. The Israelis don't allow Palestinians to plant cotton. I never knew that till I started to work on this film.
They don't want us to use it as an export.
Yeah. Only they have cotton. Wow. Yeah.
And so you talk a lot, I've heard about the village that you kind of refurbished a village outside of Nablus, and you didn't end up getting to use it because production was supposed to start just a week after the genocide began. Yeah. And the timing of production, whenever I was watching, I just want to hear about, I'm sure it was emotional, but were there any days where there were just moments that maybe stood out to you and the team of just like, maybe it was just too eerily similar, or maybe it was, you know, you're portraying something that happened a century ago.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the beginning stages of the ethnic cleansing while the peak of it is happening, you know, 100 miles down, not even.
Yeah.
So was there a day in particular that it was the hardest to shoot, or it just felt the biggest?
Yeah, it's interesting because it was already, you know, the preparation for the film was already such an insane idea and thing we were doing.
Yeah.
This like, hugely ambitious Palestinian film in which hundreds and hundreds of workers and, you know, people were the ironsmith, the guys that were restoring the farming terraces, we were spread out all over the country.
Yeah.
People doing costumes, people doing everything to get it right. And it was insane because, of course, the military occupation, we were getting stopped all the time, going to visit the location. There were days we couldn't get to it.
Yeah.
Or some crew was stopped and some crew got through, or whatever. And we're just like, let's just keep, you know, let's ignore all of this. Like, let's pretend we don't live. Like, let's pretend we're free. We live like other people, and just keep, you know, we come back the next day. We come back the next day. Like, we just don't give up. And then October 7th, it was like everything was more impossible. And I think there was so much. So all of the things in the story are like very present to us, right? Collective punishment, you know, the boy, you know, getting tied to the front of the Jeep, like, you know, being used as a human shield, like occupation in general, like so I think those scenes of violence are already, they're familiar for us, and they're difficult. But I guess it really was the most difficult day, I would say, was the day that in the film, the army enters the village, and they round up all the villagers. And that was a particularly difficult day because, you know, everybody was feeling, of course, you know, the genocide was happening. We're in the middle of it. We are reenacting scenes of violence while there's much, much more violence happening around us.
Yeah.
Death is everywhere. It's everywhere, and we all, you know, we were connected to it. Those are our family, those are our friends. Everybody on the crew and the cast have a personal connection, and it's not that far away, as you said. And I think like that day, I talk about, you know, the woman who plays the mother. She fainted that day. She just passed out on set. Oh. She's an empath, and was really, every day was very difficult for her. And she's, you know, very sensitive and was feeling everything that was happening. And that day when the army came in and they're all like, all the villagers are gathered in the square and we were shooting, she fainted. She fainted because, and you know, somebody thought it was like part of like the performance, and I knew it wasn't, and I ran to her. She's just like, I can't, like, it's too much to bear, like thinking about how real this is for people, and, you know, it's us. It's you know, our own genocide that we're witnessing.
Yeah. While you guys were shooting, though, I think it was Palestine had not been discussed internationally on that level ever. Yeah. To the point that it was the moment that we've been waiting for, I guess, of people really embracing what was happening and acknowledging it and being in shock with us for the first time. But I think it also opened up conversations to part of our society that we weren't prepared for them to talk about, right? Yeah. So at the time that you were shooting, there were interviews being aired across the world talking about Palestinian resistance, and whether you condemn it or you support it, or whether to humanize it or to dehumanize it. Yeah. And while I was watching, I realized it was one of maybe the only time that I was sitting in a theater and was comfortable supporting Palestinian resistance. It was, these men looked like, sounded like, dressed like what the West is taught is a terrorist. Yeah. But the audience, they're the protagonists. Yeah. Were the conversations that were happening in the media or around the world, did that kind of did it make it more daunting to be portraying resistance, or did it make you more motivated? Did it change anything about how you wanted them to be deemed?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's an interesting question. I think I try not to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Because it's also my second film that's about a moment of resistance. Because When I Saw You is set in the late 60s.
Right.
And I remember having this conversation was present even then. That was in, When I Saw You was 2012. And people were like, why are you're making like terrorists like Fadain look like, you're romanticizing them. And I said, yeah, I am romanticizing them. Yes, I am. The film is from a child's point of view, and what's wrong with being romantic about a resistance? And it's like, and I'm sure there's a lot of criticism for me saying that, but what's wrong with we romanticize, Che Guevara. Like, we have like figures that the West allows us to romanticize today. Not at that time, but now, today, there's certain figures that were like the enemy number one in the West, and now it's okay to like talk about them. Palestinians have never been part of that. And, there's, it's the most honorable thing in the world is to defend your land and defend your family.
So do you feel like the conversations around resistance have changed in the last almost 15 years then?
I think no.
No, you don't feel like the moment is different and that maybe the Western audiences met it differently? You think it's kind of...
I don't know. I mean, I don't also live in the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, I've sort of, with the time that I left the U.S., it was very ugly, and there was no conversation like that happening. So you would know better than I do if the conversation has changed.
Yeah.
But I do know that trying to, screen the film, we've had resistance to it a lot. And it hasn't been screened. It's been left out of certain conversations. It's been left out of certain festivals. It doesn't have mainstream distribution. Watermelon is distributing it. It doesn't have like a big mainstream, and like I have, filmmakers that, from the Arab world who have done films about other things have, big distributors on their films. So it's not palatable, I think. And then, the Israelis shut down this film. Like, we're not allowed to screen it anymore in Palestine.
Can you talk a bit about that?
There are no Israelis in the film, but still, it's threatening. It's interesting. Like, they came in our screening in East Jerusalem, and they arrested the projectionist, and they, shut down the whole place. They put up a sign that this film is no longer allowed to screen. And then they came back a second time and arrested the projectionist again and detained him. And then they came back a third time. And it's like really interesting when you think about it, because it's pre-state. It's 1936. And still, the ideas of the film are threatening.
Why do you think that?
Why do you think that?
It's for you to say, not me.
No, it's about, because you know what? We're not victims in it.
Yeah.
We're not victims. We are active parts, and we are, memory is resistance. Palestinians telling their story is really threatening to people.
Right.
We didn't disappear, and we will not.
It's definitely not the violence, the violence that we've seen in Gaza, trumps what you see in that movie by a million.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not that. Yeah, I do think.
And you don't really see violence in the film, actually. It's not like a war movie where there's like big battle scenes.
Right.
It's very intimate. It's about, family, mother and her daughter. There are violent moments in the film, but it's not really, it's not about the battles and the, things like that.
Right. And so you're right. It is about the focus of the movie is on the British occupation, and you do get to see the beginning of the settler colonialism start. But I almost forgot that sometimes at points that it was the British that were occupying Palestinians in the film, because of how similar the day-to-day life was, how similar the strategy was, and maybe you would even say it was the blueprint of what's happening today.
It's absolutely the blueprint.
Right.
It's incredible how much it's exactly the British set up the blueprint of occupation and the Israelis are using it exactly. It's not even creatively been like done, you know, the occupation of Palestine.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's crazy when you really examine all of the things. It is the obvious things about checkpoints, about population control, about criminalizing everybody, the entire population. But it's an administrative detention. It's laws. It's like the whole system from top down is set up by the British, and the Israelis are doing it. So,
and that key scene kind of at the end where you have all of the leaders of the British occupation at one table.
Yeah.
And it's like watching our history being just a conversation.
Yeah.
And everything that they talked about did happen.
Yeah.
The fragmentation of our population, the fragmentation of Palestinians from the rest of the Arab world.
Yeah.
And without giving away too much, but there is a point where we see fighters from our neighboring states come down. Why was that important for you to show? And was that not just to Western audiences who might be learning about, you know, the 36 revolution and how it was a unified struggle, but what do you think you wanted Arab audiences to see with that?
I mean, it was a unified, it's about 36, but it was also about, you know, the Syrians were getting independence, you know, the French colonization. It was like the British and French, you know, chopping up our whole region, and there was something was spreading. There was a real liberation movement that was spreading. And that unity, I find that scene you're talking about, and I know many Palestinians, when they watch that scene, feel really depressed.
Yeah.
And I feel it's really a beautiful moment, but it's so heartbreaking because the things that were said, and now today where we stand, that you know, what is colonization and occupation about? It's divide and conquer, and they did it. They managed to divide us so much and create, you know, this separation and this, you know, thing. And I think I find that a really sad scene.
Yeah, it is. Something else that I think you do in the film, in addition to contextualizing it, I think to a general audience, you go into aspects of Palestinian society and Palestinian history. You go into the aspects that sometimes I think we look away from purposefully or subconsciously.
Yeah.
Because it kind of complicates the narrative that we work so hard in packaging to people for them to understand the violence and the occupation and everything. But one of the things that I found really interesting was seeing the tension between those in the bourgeoisie and those that lived in the port cities and the relationship they had with the villagers, the Falhin, and the ones that were more face-to-face with the settlers and with the British soldiers. What were you doing with that? Or why, in addition to, again, the history, what were you trying to explore there?
I mean, I think, like I said earlier, you know, the film is made by us, and it's about us, and it's for us, and then we also have to talk about the other things. Like, it's because it's for us, you know, and I think talking about, you know, those kinds of things is really important. Of course, nobody, there's no angels, but that doesn't make the cause less just. When we have characters, like certain characters in the film that we may not agree with, or they take choices, that doesn't take away from the justness of a cause. And I did want to explore it, you know, because of course it's still happening today. You know, there's like people making decisions because of business, of money, of let's be modern and let's move on, and you know, it's the thing that's still killing us today. The divide and conquer, we're still today is, oh my God, it's like in so much, you know, if we are not aware of it, we're going to let it eat us up, eat us alive. The Jeremy Irons says in the film. But it's like we have to, you know, we have to talk about it and you know, be aware of it.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, I think there are a lot of things that are so relevant to what's happening right now, and the fact that this history just keeps repeating itself from since then, and even before then, actually, but that we have been under control. and we're trying to be a free people, and yet we're living again and again. Like, what's the difference between your life and your grandparents' life? Well,
I'm just watching it.
Yeah, yeah.
From the
but like,
outside.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, what has changed? And
Yeah.
that's really, we've got to, you know, how do you, I think about how do we stop this from going? And that every year Palestinians say it can't get worse. And every year it gets worse.
Yeah.
Our entire lives. It's not going to get worse, and it gets worse, and it gets worse.
I have to mention this scene to you because it's one of my favorite scenes depicting anything Palestinian. In Salt of the Sea, there's a scene where the main characters sneak through a checkpoint. And there's that feeling of euphoria,
Yeah, yeah.
feeling like you just did a heist.
Yeah.
But then also that feeling of homecoming, like that nuance at the same time. And it makes me emotional every time I think about it,
Yeah.
because every time you pass through a checkpoint, you feel that. Anytime you, from the West Bank, getting into Jerusalem or seeing Jaffa, it feels that same way, like you're sneaking into your own home.
Yeah.
And
Isn't that incredible?
yeah,
Yeah.
it still gets me till today.
Yeah.
And I want to ask if there was anything in the film that felt very nuanced to you, like you wanted to show a very nuanced Palestinian moment, or was there anything that you think stands out to you whenever you were writing it in that same way?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I mean, I think I think there's so much. It's possibility. I'm interested in those moments of possibility, of openness, that like anything can be possible. Like that scene in Salt of the Sea, it's just like a moment of like being free, like feeling free, even though we're not free. And I think that this film also has a lot of moments like that.
Yeah.
And the making of this film was that. Like when I said we were just pretend we were free, just you have to. It's not the reality, but it's the thing we need. Your heart needs it. Your soul needs it. And it's like, it's tremendous. And like that, you know, the collaboration of this team working together to make this film against all odds in the middle of our genocide.
Yeah.
And that, you know, when we finished, after it got dragged on and on and on, we had to stop production 4 times. We lost locations. We lost so many things. And when we finally finished it, because everything was saying we're not going to be able to do this. And even, you know, some of the, you know, organizations who had supported the film, they were like, it's not going to happen. Like, how are you going to do this? I'm like, we are going to do it. We're going to do it. I was like a parrot. Like, we're going to do it. We're just going to do it. And we're going to do it in Palestine.
Yeah.
We will do it in Palestine. We will shoot in Jerusalem. There's a scene in the film in Jerusalem where the British tank that we built, we brought it to the old city of Jerusalem, and it's parked in the scene. It's in the corner of the scene, this 1930s British tank. At the old city of Jerusalem with a Palestinian crew making a Palestinian film in the middle of the darkest moment of our history.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my God, this is like amazing. It was that feeling of like euphoria, like we willed it to happen, and it happened.
I have FOMO. I wish I was there. So now the film is releasing in the next couple of weeks throughout the nation. And it's coming out during the U.S. and Israeli war in the Middle East, which has, you know, spilled over in basically every border of every Middle Eastern country. How do you feel like the timing of the release here changes the conversations that you're having about the film, or does it meet a different moment that you expected, even, you know, during the genocide or the peak of the genocide? Not that it hasn't stopped, but it released in September, which was post-ceasefire in Europe. And now, and now you're here.
Yeah.
So what are some different thoughts or different, you know, things that you're talking to with
Yeah,
people
it's interesting. Well, I think, you know, I think I'm curious, when we released in the UK, there was this feeling of a lot of people like this is not going to play well in the UK because the film is very tough on the British. And it was the opposite. The cinemas were filled. It was like 13 weeks in the cinema. And it was like young people. The distributor was like, I've never seen so many young people in a theater. Actually, our films are usually the audience is older. And with this film, it's a very young crowd. And it's like an older crowd as well, but like the young people, they like this is and I was like, this is like amazing.
Yeah.
And then people against, people are not their governments, as we know, and I think that feeling of people are really understanding that they are being lied to, and they're being they're not being told the full story. So in that way, I think that, and the film coming out now in the U.S. is so critical and important. Palestinian voices have always been silenced in the U.S. Palestinian story has always been silenced. And now I think a lot of people are aware so many other communities, any voices of dissent, so many other communities are being silenced right now in the U.S. It's like the worst it's ever been. So in that way, I'm hoping is that, this is the time to support those voices. People need to come to the cinema. People need to allow Palestinians to speak and all those other voices, and we have to find each other because we are the majority.
Right. With Lebanon,
I
think we're starting to see, the modern iteration of what we're seeing in the film, right? With targeting villages.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's also something, for Lebanese audiences as well, especially those from the South?
That we were supposed to release this film in Lebanon exactly 3 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. And
it's not happening. And I have a lot of friends in Lebanon and from the villages. And actually I'm getting their messages that they're telling me, we're checking up on each other and stuff. And one of the things they're saying is what happened to you guys is now happening to us. And and they're feeling it. And they're also feeling and very conscious that the world is ignoring that too. The focus is not, who's talking about Lebanon. It's like every night is a horror movie over and nobody's talking about it.
Right.
The conversation like Trump and it's like, people, it's like incredible. So I think, there is a story, and of course, everybody, our people have all experienced. We have been all colonized, and all our countries have been destroyed. Lebanon has been destroyed decades ago. Palestine has been destroyed. Syria was destroyed. Iraq was destroyed. It's like now Iran, like there was, the palace that was destroyed, the historical,
It was the Shah's palace.
Like everything, like that's the idea, right? That just obliterate us into the Stone Age, as some American politician once said. Yeah.
Last question. I think, is there another period in Palestinian history that you think should be highlighted in the same way, or is ready, is there a moment that's ready? Yeah, there's so many incredible moments, I think, to our story. For me, there's a lot of incredible moments and stories and films to talk about that have not been talked about. But for me, I will not make something this large again. It was a killer. Yeah. It was really. It nearly killed us to make this. Yeah. I'm sure. And I want to, I don't know if you saw the film right before this one was called Wajib. It's two men in a car. I'm back in that. Go back to that vibe. Yeah, go back to that vibe for a little bit. But then I'm like, I love period. There's so many incredible stories. Yeah. And I'm sure there's going to be more after people watch this. I really do think that it's going to spark something in a lot of people. It did in me as well. So I'm sure other people. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, of course. And no compromise. I think just doing it our way is really the main thing. Yeah.
You know, it took 10 years because of that as well. I mean, it was like trying to finance something like this without compromise, without making changes because somebody wants it more palatable for their, you know, organization or country or whatever it is. And it's like, you know, just saying no and sticking to what, you know, you have to be proud of it in the end. It has to represent what you want it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amazing.